Now, were you all really conscious of how you were listening to each other over the break? That's what we found after we did this at church. Everyone, for a week or two, really, you felt everyone's really trying to listen to you. Yeah, so sorry, he's standing here to make sure that I do a review. So we've only got 2 letters so far. So the B is for bless, well done, and the L is for listen. And I'm going to take us on to, he's waiting actually to move the screen on. Okay, to eat. Now, the simple way to do eat, we could do it in 5 seconds. You have to do it, so do it with others from time to time. But we're going to make it a bit longer. Not too much, though, because we're doing 5-week sermon series and 2 little sessions here, so we're cranking on through. Eat really is about hospitality. And so I'm assuming all of you have, maybe not much, but maybe loads, just a little familiarity because you've come with church with the Bible. So again, I'm going to do my teacher thing and just ask you, can you think of any examples or verses from the Bible about hospitality? Okay, I just want you to brainstorm for a minute. Again, in your little 2s or 3s, what can you think of? Where does the Bible either show examples or give instruction about hospitality? Okay, I can hear you've been working hard on that. Now, if we had more time, I'd ask for your examples, but we haven't, so I'm just going to tell you the ones that I know of, and then if I missed any, you can tell each other later. I know we have Abraham in Genesis 18, where he entertained the angels, but he asked them to come in, and then that's referred to again in Hebrews 13:2, where it says, do not forget to entertain strangers. There's an example that I quite like about Elisha and the Shunammite woman. Did anybody think of that one? No. Okay. It's quite obscure. But I'm just going to read it. It's just 2 verses because I think, wow, this is really an example of hospitality. It's in 2 Kings chapter 4, 8-10. It says, one day Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us. Now that's really hospitality. You build in a whole room for someone. I thought of Peter. When he was staying with the tanner, when he had the vision on the roof, that was someone putting him up. And obviously when Paul was talking earlier, I was in the hallway, I heard, sending out the 12 and the 72, he sent them actually to use other people's hospitality. So he was counting on people being hospitable to them. And as you know, it said, whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the town. Paul in Romans 12:13 tells us, practice hospitality. And 1 Peter 4:9 is also offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. So it can't be that easy. We're told we have to do it without grumbling. Now, I think Peter instructs people to offer hospitality, and Paul instructs people to offer hospitality because they both had to use it a lot. They traveled around just like Jesus did, as Paul was saying earlier, and they relied on people taking them in, feeding them, and looking after their physical needs. So they told people to practice hospitality because they knew the value of it, and they needed it a lot. Now, why is hospitality important? Well, it's kind of like listening, I think. If we make people feel welcome and we care for their physical needs, because really this bit is about the physical needs, they feel valued, we're reproducing what God does for us, and we're lending credibility for the kingdom. Now, there is a difference between hospitality and entertaining. Now, you know there's this famous definition of hospitality, making someone feel at home when you wish they were. So now, I don't know what Billericay is like, but I know what Woodford is like. And there can be a real culture of entertaining and dinner parties in Woodford. And when we first came, we were invited to lots of people's homes, everybody's lovely, beautiful homes, and they'd do all these dinners, and you always had to have 2 puddings and all of that. And I thought, oh, that's quite intimidating. I can't do that standard, so therefore I just won't have anybody because it's too embarrassing. But or I'd try and do it, and it would be so stressful that I think, oh, can't bear doing that again. It's expensive and it's hard work, and I'm just anxious the whole time. What are they thinking of me and my hostessing abilities? But actually, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, again, making people feel welcome. Now, we are getting better at hospitality. We haven't been able to do a lot of it because of our family situation mainly. When you've got an autistic son at home, it's quite difficult to have people in because you just never know what chaos is going to erupt next. But I just decided you just have to do it anyway, and this is how we are. You just take us as we are. And be quite relaxed about it. And when I do Christmas dinner for Paul's family, of course I'm from America, so I don't really, I didn't know all the Brussels sprouts and parsnips, and I've never cooked them before, but I wanted to do it right for them because I wanted them to have their traditional Christmas. So it could be very stressful, making sure I get it all right. And then I just had to think, you know what, if it goes wrong, we'll order pizza, because I'm sure we could get pizza somewhere, even on Christmas Day. And it will always be the Christmas everyone will remember. So we turn it into a positive. So take the pressure off yourself and just think it doesn't matter. Just the important thing is people come and they feel welcome. Because that's what you like, really, when you go somewhere. You want to feel accepted and welcome, and that's what you remember, having that's going to make the positive experience. Paul talks about something called refrigerator rights. Now, how many people in your life, if they're in your hand, actually have rights to your refrigerator, that feel that at home? So when we're talking about trying to make a culture in our church in Woodford, not just about entertaining, but actually about all mucking in and doing it together and that sort of thing. Actually, there aren't many people. I'd be happy I'd just come and open my fridge. But that'd mostly be because I'm thinking, oh dear, what's in there? Something moldy? What are they going to see? That sort of thing. Yeah, but it's just about relaxing, just thinking more. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's more important the attitude. And also, it doesn't have to be in your house. It could just be, I'm taking someone out, just offering hospitality to someone, even if it's out at the local coffee shop. Because some people, it's difficult to have people back to your home. It just isn't. It just can't happen for one reason or another. And also, I like to think there is also a difference between cultural expectations and scriptural expectations. I think this is really important. So what our culture expects from us, we just take as so natural and normal, like the local culture of it has to be done perfectly. But actually, the scriptural expectations are more important than the cultural ones. So Jesus was very happy to break cultural expectations when he needed to. For instance, the woman at the well. If he hadn't spoken to a woman, if he hadn't gone to Samaria, crossed the racial divide and the gender divide, we wouldn't have that wonderful story about the woman at the well. So Jesus was more concerned about God's attitude towards people than the cultures and societies. So it's crossing, not being afraid to step outside of what the local culture expects, to do something that God's asking you to do. So that's kind of personal hospitality. And we heard a talk about this from a man named Tommy Tenney last year, and it was something quite interesting to me. I'd never heard this talked about before. And he read for us, it was about Martha, Mary and Martha, who is famous, for the Mary and Martha story. Mary sitting at Jesus' feet and Martha too busy to do that, and complaining about her sister. But if you look at John 11, 1-7, it says, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick.' When he heard this, Jesus said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.' Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus." That's where I'm going to stop, because actually, this is a famous story because of Lazarus. But there's that little line there, Jesus loved Martha. And what he was talking about in this talk he did was, he's saying, why does it say that? When Mary's the one who poured the perfume on his feet, Mary's the one who sat at his feet. But it goes out of its way to say Jesus loved Martha and her sister. And he was saying that maybe it has something to do with how much Jesus appreciated, actually, Martha's looking after him. And because Jesus was, yes, he was divine and the Son of God, but he was also human. And he was God, but he got tired and he got hungry, and Martha always opened her home to him. And when he was there, she looked after him. So I think in many ways, Martha gets a bad rap, but here it's kind of redressed, but we skim over that bit a little quickly. But Jesus loved Martha. So yes, Mary worshipped his divinity. We know that from several places, but Martha cared for his humanity. So I think that's just really interesting thing to think about. Now, thinking about your church and our church. Now, All Saints is a big church, relatively speaking. I come from America, so I don't really think it's a big church. That's why I say that. And it can be accused of being unfriendly. People can come in, go out, and have no one speak to them. And then they'll say, oh, it wasn't a very friendly church. Some people have a different story. They come in, one person speaks to them, and they stay. And then they still remember 20 years later. I often hear people say this, when we came in 17 years ago, the first people to speak to us were blah, blah, so-and-so and so-and-so. It stays with people when they're welcomed and when someone is kind to them. But what I want to say is that it's everyone's responsibility to be welcoming. Again, some of us will find this easier than others. I'm quite shy. I find it very difficult to go up to people I don't know and speak to them. But still, I can be welcoming and make an effort. And I think a person being welcoming and friendly can make all the difference to someone when they come in. So the more people who are willing to be welcoming, the more people that will have a good experience when they come in. And now some people say, and I've said this in the past, I don't like to ask someone if they're new, because you have to have something to say to people, don't you? So you often say, oh, is this your first time? Have you been here before? And people say, I can't say that. What if they turn to me and say, oh, I've been coming for 20 years? And that's what you always hear people say when they say, that's why I don't talk to people, because I'm afraid they're going to say that to me. But I say, if they've been coming for 20 years, they should not be offended that you ask them. They should be pleased, actually, that you're making an effort to make their church a welcoming place. And if they have, then really you should know each other by now. So don't let that put you off. Just go for it anyway and just find something to talk to people about or say hello to them or get them a drink or whatever. So that's hospitality, eating personally in our homes with our neighbors and the people we know in our lives, sharing that time and meeting their needs in that way, and also as a church, being welcoming and hospitable to people, because then they're more likely to stick around for what you've got to say. So that's that, and we'll move on to the S study.
The two S's, in fact. So thanks, love. So hospitality. Eat with people, it's kind of like the magic bullet. Have you ever noticed that if you share a meal with people, you get much closer in relationship? And you'll probably be experiencing that this weekend. You'll be eating meals for the first time with people, and you will have a new level of relationship you didn't have before. Some of you might know that the English word companion literally means the person I eat bread with. So, as Becky was saying, it's about being welcoming, it's about making people feel comfortable and inviting them into a place where we're on a place where relationships get better and better. But eat, share food, even if it's a biscuit and a coffee with people, that will break down barriers. Okay, the S is for study. Now, it's a bit of an odd one because a lot of people, when they've looked at this, have said, well, it seems to me that blessing people with tangible acts of love and listening to people and eating with people, that those are all kind of things that are giving to other people. And study sounds a little bit more like it's for me. I'm studying to learn stuff. But I don't think it's really meant to be like that. I think the purpose of study is that we share with other people what we're learning from God. Now, when I first met Becky, she had glasses. But she took the glasses off and wasn't wearing contact lenses. She would be fairly blind. She could sort of Up to about here was okay. Beyond that, you were all blurs. And a few years ago, we went to the States, and at that time, a lot of her friends and family had just had laser eye surgery, and they were really excited about it. So they said, you need to get laser eye surgery. Well, I wasn't very convinced about this. Becky was up for it, but I have a kind of instinctive English person's distrust of, Americans being over the top with things like medicine and dentistry and stuff like that. So I wasn't really sure. But then I found out they were going to pay for it, so that was even better. And I went along with Becky, and we did the kind of thing, and they said, you have to bring her in, because she obviously won't be able to drive back afterwards, so I went along. And I was thinking, I'll have a nice half an hour reading a magazine or two, and then Becky will come out, with eye patches on like a pirate, and I'll drive her home. But no, when I got there, you have to go and watch your wife have laser eye surgery. So, really? So, yeah, be supportive. We've got a viewing room. So, all right, fine. So, the viewing room, glass screen. I'm looking in there. She's in there going, like that. And then they clamped her head down and they pulled her eyes like that. And then they fired a laser into her eyes, and you could hear the as a laser went off. And I'm sure I could see smoke and I could smell burning flesh. It was horrible. Yeah, she says it wasn't great for her either. But what happened was the idea is the laser reshapes the eye. And when the eye has been reshaped, the lens forms in a different way, and they're able to correct the problem with your eyes. It's magic. Or science, I'm not sure. I get very confused about those two. But we need to study, because the way things are not the way we normally see. All of us have bad glasses with regard to truth. So what we need to do is we need to learn from God. And the Apostle Paul talks to the Corinthian church about that a lot, because the Corinthians lived in a place where everybody was very clever and everybody was very into philosophies about how you see the world. And then Paul says to them, look, brothers, when I came to you, I didn't come with eloquence or superior wisdom. I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. He said, I wasn't going to bring a message with wise and persuasive words. I was going to bring a message that rested on the power of God, so that your faith wouldn't be clever human thoughts, but it would be based on what God has done. And he talks in the rest of that chapter, as 1 Corinthians 2, he talks about how God is wanting to help us to see things the way they really are. God wants to reshape our spiritual eyes to perceive truth. It says on the screen here, there is a wisdom that's been hidden. People don't see things as they really are. It's hidden from them, but it's revealed to us, and it's spiritually discerned. So this is actually something that we can do for others. We can learn to see things as they really are. And studying is something we do for ourselves, but is always meant to be shared with other people as well. Now, you can learn more about God in a variety of ways. We all have our own individual spiritual pathways. Some people learn in relationship. For them, they have to be in a small group. That's where they learn, when they discuss with others. Some people learn intellectually, but they learn by studying. And if you're somebody that learns that way, you need to have a good Christian book on the go to really kind of like stretch you and make you work hard. Some people get truth in worship, and you need to buy worship albums and come to worship services and really give yourself and invest in that. Some people learn by doing. That's one of the ones I'm really strong on. I've got to get involved. I've got to put it into practice. I've actually got to do something about it to learn. Some people, more like Becky, they need to go away and be on their own and think. They're more contemplative. They need to sort of find places where they can go and be quiet and just reflect. Other people, they learn through serving, and a lot of people learn through creation. They want to get closer to God, they actually need to go away from the normal place where they are and get out into somewhere beautiful, going down to the coast, or go and walk in the hills, or go walk through the forest. But the point is, we all have different spiritual pathways. God has wired each of us with different ways of coming to know him better, depending on our personality. And I suppose it's because though we're exposed to so many forms of information coming at us, there are all sorts of forms of media, the television, the radio, the print, all of that coming at us. And well done to Liz for already sending out about 20 tweets on Twitter. So there's lots of things going on all the time. But we need to make sure that our input is, as far as possible, is godly input. Yes, we need to stay abreast of what's going on in the world. But actually, if we're constantly being fed information, we need to make sure that the information that's going in is good information. So these spiritual pathways need to be augmented with other things. So we need to learn how to study. And that could mean reading books or looking at Bible reading notes. Young trendy people know what podcasts are. You can, on your phone, you can get really interesting, stimulating things that will make you think. On the radio, there are some really good programs on some of the Christian radio channels. And then we, in our church, have been promoting people doing time of studying, giving aside time to God. It should be a normal thing for people to do a gap year and find some sort of way of doing it. One of the things we've done in our church, which has really been exciting actually, is we've had a spontaneous book swap. So what we've said to people is, okay, next week, everybody bring a Christian book that you read and enjoyed and were really blessed by. And if you want to, you can write a note inside it about how that book was exciting for you, but you're happy to give it away. And we'll all bring it, and everybody give one and everybody take one. The first time we did it, actually, we did it at Christmas, and we said to people, bring books wrapped up. And then we'll have a stack of books for men, books for women, theological type books, testimony books and children's books. And wrap them up and just say which of those types it is. And then we said to everybody just before Christmas, everybody, you can take a book. And we did it on a Sunday when we knew there were going to be loads and loads of guests in church. And I think we had about hundreds of books, didn't we? Largely because Becky made me give away about 20, because I have too many. But it was a great thing to do. And it was really exciting. And of course everybody felt, I'm really blessed, because they'd given away an old book and they received a book that was new to them. And because it was a gift, they were all excited about it. But the point of this is that when we study to learn, and what we learn, we pass on. So what we've tried to train our people in All Saints to do is that when you are studying the Bible or reading a book or something like that, you need to think along these lines. What am I learning and why am I learning it? Because as you're thinking about what am I learning and why am I learning it, you'll often realise that actually somebody else would really be blessed by this. I'm not talking about, the usual thing that happens when somebody preaches and we go, ooh, Annie really needs to be here. She really needs to hear this. Naturally, we always do that, don't we? I know somebody that's really got a problem with that. They need to be here. We usually use to prevent ourselves from actually being spoken to ourselves about that. We can always think of somebody that has a bigger problem in that area. But I think that when God reveals truth to us, he often is giving us truths that he wants to pass to others. So if we can have that attitude of how can I bless somebody else with what I've heard today, then you'll find that there'll be all sorts of situations. And I've often found that I'm reading things in my Bible or hearing things in talks, and then the same day or the next day I'll come across somebody, we'll be in conversation, and I'll think, what I learnt really applies to your situation. And I think we're trying to encourage people to get much more natural, even with people outside the church, to say, I read a promise in the Bible yesterday that says, if you trust in the Lord and you don't lean on your understanding, he will guide and direct your paths. That might be a real encouragement for you. If we learn those sorts of things, and we learn this discipline of thinking, if God has said it to me, maybe it's not just for me, but I'm meant to share it with somebody else, then that can be a really interesting discipline. So we've said to people, bless, over this last week, have you done a tangible act of kindness to somebody? Have you listened to somebody and given them the gift of your undivided attention? Have you eaten with somebody and shared some food or drink, or, and spent companionship time with them? Have you been able to pass on something that God told you in your study to somebody else? And the last one, there we go. The last one is the S, serve. Now, actually, the church is pretty good at serving. And I'm sure Christ Church is pretty good at serving as well. There's amazing statistics that Christians in the UK give over 23 million hours of voluntary service every month. Well, the church is amazing. Church people are far, far more likely to be volunteering in charities and helping organisations, even outside the church, as well as all the things the church does. The church in England teaches over 1 million pupils. It has 500,000 additional children through children's work activities outside of schools. We deploy 120,000 volunteers in youth and children's work. Aren't we amazing? Church is incredible. Christians give £52 million away to other charities, not just what they give to the church, but what they give away to other charities. And 85% of the population come into contact with the church or other place of worship during the year. So serving is really close to the heart of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And it's natural. Jesus said that what we should do is love God with all of our heart, soul, mind and strength, and love our neighbours as ourselves. So serving is a natural thing. And there has to be something very significant underlying why Christians respond in that way. And of course, it's the example of Jesus. That Jesus was the ultimate servant. Philippians chapter 2 talks about, it's a very famous passage. He emptied himself and became a servant, took on human form, and being found in human appearance, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And what people don't always realise is that actually that was 7 steps down. Bill Hybels wrote a book called Descending into Greatness. That Jesus didn't stand on his own rights, but he was willing to take that lowly point and to go down further and further and further. So he identified himself with our fallenness, took on human flesh. He became an ordinary person and he went about unnoticed. I don't know about you, but I always think that's amazing that for 30 years before he started his ministry, he was just walking around amongst people and nobody noticed that God was actually walking in their midst. He humbled himself. He was willing to serve. He was obedient to death, and even the most painful and degrading kind of death, so that nobody can say, you don't know, because he'd been there. Now, we know that God honours that kind of desire to descend and to become a servant, because the passage continues, therefore he is highly exalted, given the name above every name. At that name every knee shall bow, in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and ultimately every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Now, I know probably that most of us struggle to serve, and we will come up normally with 2 things. The first thing that might stop us from serving is that we're a little bit afraid. We don't know what to do, or we're just a little afraid of stepping out. But the normal reason is that fear is rooted in busyness. We aren't sure about serving because we almost feel close to the edge already with so much in our lives and so much busyness. But if serving is being like Jesus, and if Jesus is a servant, then we have to find some way to put the most important things in our lives in first. And thinking of others should be the first thing we do with our lives rather than the last. So I think if you're a Christian, it's a thing that we always need to look at and consider is, am I actually following Jesus after the example of being a servant? And I think we should make sure that we can improve our serve in 3 ways. First one, spontaneously. We should be able to respond spontaneously to need. Something gets mentioned in church or somebody mentions something, and we should have a little bit of margin in our life. Now, I'm sure you're really busy, because I know I am. But we all need to have that little bit of flexibility in our life where we can say, you know, are you going to need help getting that back from IKEA? Because I'll come and help you carry it. You know, be able to respond spontaneously. We probably need to make sure we're doing something regularly as well. Make a statement with our diary. It's always been said that if you really want to discover what a Christian believes, look at their bank statement and look at their diary. Because that tells you everything about what they really think is important, what they believe. And does your diary have in it a time when you serve on a regular basis, where you've made a statement, I'm going to make sure every week I'm doing something to serve in Jesus' name? And sometimes for people, it can really become a lifestyle, and being servants should affect our choice of career. You know, we live in a world where, because it's quite self-centered and because it thinks that serving is demeaning, talks now about careers, not vocations. I don't know if you know the difference. The word vocation means something that you feel called to. And people aren't called to be nurses in the same way they used to. That's why a lot of our nurses are lovely Africans and Asians. Because a lot of people growing up here in this country don't feel called to serve. There are lots of callings to be nurses and doctors, to be teachers, to do things like that. Those things really need to honour. It affects our choice of career, it affects our use of our homes, it affects our vision for our family. You know, Becky said, true religion is this. And then she talked about that passage where it says what God wants us to do. And it's all about whatever we do for others. Becky mentioned the autism service, and you know, Jesus said, whatever you do for the least of these. So characteristics of Christian service is that it should be up close and personal. And one of the dangers of us being busy and having responsible jobs is that it's much easier for us to write a check than it is to engage with the problem. And it's really great to write a check to help with ministry to the poor, but it totally changes your spirit when you actually engage with a poor person. When you find an opportunity through the church perhaps, or in your ordinary everyday life, to actually connect, and wherever possible to look for the people that we know God loves but the world doesn't seem to. And we often talk about the last, the least and the lost. You know, all those people who otherwise get overlooked. Richard Foster wrote these words, and then we're going to give you a moment or two to have a conversation. Service that is motivated by duty, obligation, I ought to, I need to. Service that is duty motivated breathes death. Service that flows out of our inward person is life and joy and peace. The risen Christ beckons each one of us to the ministry of the towel. Perhaps you would like to begin by experimenting with a prayer like this. Begin the day by praying, Lord Jesus, I would so appreciate it if you would bring me someone today whom I can serve. And the way the Christian life works is that if we're faithful in little things, then he will lead us into greater things. So when we've done this Blessed series, it is not about big dramatic things. I'm not saying that every one of us is going to go, right, that's it, I'm going to give up and become a missionary. That isn't necessarily what God is saying to us. He's not looking for dramatic gestures. What he's looking for is little changes, motivated by love in the ordinary everyday. That's what makes Christians stand out. That's what surprises the world, and that's what leads people to start asking questions. So this is our training for our church. We can say to them every now and then, okay, in the last week, have you done a thoughtful act for someone? Have you given someone the gift of your attention? Have you shared food or drink with someone so that you're really forming a relationship? Have you heard or learnt something from God that could be an encouragement to others that you've been able to share? And have you made sure that at some point you've put on the towel and actually served someone in the example of Jesus. Okay, so B stands for bless. L for E for S. Serve. Brilliant. Now we've got about 10 minutes-ish, 5 minutes. What I'd like you to do before we leave is just turn back to the people you've been talking to. Say which of those do you find easy and which of those do you think you might need prayer to improve on.